Fantastic, thank you, Anne. Right, okay, I'm going to ask some of the kids to come up one at a time to ask you a question. So we'll start off with Sky, please. Do you want to come up and ask Annie your question, please, Sky?
To work with animals.
What made me decide to work with animals?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so when I was probably about your age, I went to an aquarium and I really liked the fish, and then I thought to myself, I want to learn lots about fish. And when I was learning lots about fish, then I thought I like fish so much that I don't want them to go endangered or their habitat to become endangered, so I decided to work with animals. So I actually started working with fish, believe it or not. So it's quite apt that I'm sitting here in front of Penguin Beach pool, because I worked looking after fish in an aquarium for lots of years, and then I started to teach people, so boys and girls from schools like yourselves, and adults as well that used to come to the aquarium. I used to teach them about the animals and what was happening to the fish, and then eventually now I just focus on telling people about the animals. But I started working with fish because I like them.
Okay, thank you.
How did you get the job in London Zoo?
That's a tricky one. So after working with animals and delivering lots of sessions about the fish in the aquarium, I got more and more experience working with the public, so doing big talks in front of lots and lots of people. And then that gave me the experience to apply for a job that was just working with people and not so much with the animals, so not looking after the animals. So then a job came up for just the summer. So I came down here, applied for that job, and worked for 5 months. So when it gets very busy at the zoo, I worked here for that summer, and then they didn't let me go, which is great. So that's how I'm still here, 2 years later.
Did you visit the Pitcairn Islands?
Sorry, repeat that one.
What motivated you to visit the Pitcairn Islands?
Okay, well, the scientists that work here at the zoo, they found lots of information about the Pitcairn Islands, and some of the information told them that if we don't do something to protect the ocean around the Pitcairn Islands, then all of the animals that live there might become at risk from becoming really endangered or extinct when there's none left on the planet. So they decided to work together with lots of different organisations, with other scientists that know lots about the sea, to try and protect the ocean around the Pitcairn Islands. But in order to do that, you can't just go there and know lots about the fish. You also have to know about what schools are learning and what people want to hear about and how to spread the information to try and help that. So because I like fish so much, I think they picked up on that. The scientists like that I like to people and that I know lots of schools that come to the zoo. So they asked me to be involved with their project, to go and work with the school in Pitcairn and to work with the schools that come here to London Zoo to try and tell everyone about what's happening to Pitcairn. So that's how.
What thoughts and feelings were you experiencing when you packed for the journey?
When I packed the journey, so at first I was quite scared because it's so far away. I've never been that far away before, so I was quite scared, so that was definitely a feeling that I had. I was also very excited because it is so far away and it's such a remote place, so there's not much around it at all. It's going to be this island far away from everything, so I was very excited to see how people live on that island so far away from everything, and it's such a different way of life that they have. So I was scared because it's far away, but I was also very excited.
Okay, thank you.
Casey? Nice and clear, Casey.
I won't be able to travel for that length of time, so can you tell me what it was like for you?
Yes, I can. So after the initial shock of learning how long it would take to get to Pitcairn, so when I asked the travel agents that booked our flights and the boats how long it would actually take, they told me 4 days at least. And I hadn't travelled for that long either. So when I got out of London, so I had to, it was September, so it wasn't very warm, so I was wearing lots and lots of clothes, but I also packed clothes for the warm, I was going to a warm place. So it felt very exciting to have some warm clothes weather packed in my bag and leaving the coldish weather behind. So the really long flight from London to Los Angeles in America was probably not the most comfortable experience of my life, because you're sitting there for 8 hours or 9 hours without being able to stretch your legs. So I was probably a little bit uncomfortable, but the food was very nice. Then I had to wait for a couple of hours in Los Angeles and then get another really long flight to Tahiti, which again was a little bit more, I had more space to have a little sleep on the plane. And then it was the big boat journey to Pitcairn. So being on the boat for 2 days was probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do. I felt very, very seasick the whole time. So I had to take this medication that the doctors gave me to stop me from being sick, but that also made me very, very, very sleepy. So although I wanted to stay up and look out and go into the sea and write lots of things and talk to the people that were on the boat, I actually spent most of the time sleeping because I couldn't leave my bed.
Thank you.
Okay, Kinga?
Thank you.
Pitcairn is such a remote island, so how did it feel going from a place with millions of people to a place with very few?
Wow, it is such a remote place, and the fact there are only around 50 people on that island felt very, very different to being in London, where there are, like you say, millions of people walking around, bumping into each other with cars and noises from ambulances and police sirens and things like that. So it was very peaceful, if you can imagine just being in a place that you can't hear anything, apart from the ocean waves breaking on the rocks and some of the birds that are singing and things like that. It was very, very peaceful. Also, to not have any roads with cars and things was very, very different from living in London. So I really enjoyed how peaceful it was. But I would imagine if someone who likes living in London had to live in a place like Pitcairn, they'd probably find it quite difficult because there's not much to do. There's not much to do at all. It's a very, very quiet place. But I really enjoyed it. I felt very happy there.
Thank you.
Okay, Kirsty?
Can you tell us something about the project you were involved in on?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the project is called the Pitcairn Islands Conservation Project. So the scientists that I told you decided that it was worth protecting the ocean around the Pitcairn Islands. They are working very hard to try and work with the community because they take a lot of the fish from the sea to eat and to sell to the cruise ship boats that go past to make some money so that they can live as well. But the scientists here are trying to work with the community to try and help them to fish without running out of fish in the future, because if you fish in a certain way that's called sustainable way, then that means you won't run out of fish. So they're just measuring all the fish that the fishermen catch and weighing them and writing down what type of fish they are, putting all this in a chart which then the scientists can look at and see every year, for example, or every few months, to see how many fish might be left in the sea and whether we're okay to carry on fishing. So the project is basically around that, but because to help the marine protected area, which is what we're hoping the government, the UK government, will say yes to, so protecting that area so that no one else apart from the people of Pitcairn can fish there. Once that goes ahead, and we're very, very close, so fingers crossed, guys, once the government say yes, then we need to make sure that we tell everyone that it's a marine protected area. It belongs to the UK, which is really, really exciting because it's such a remote place, and the largest marine reserve area in the world, which is amazing, and it's got very, very exciting animals. So because of that, I'm working with the scientists to try and spread that message across and help the children of the school there in Pitcairn to try and understand how lucky they are to have such amazing wildlife just on their doorstep.
Okay, Jacob?
I can imagine your journey was very expensive, so why did London Zoo want you to go to Pitcairn? What benefits did they get from the research?
Very good. So that is a good question, because this type of work is very expensive and the trip was very expensive indeed. So London Zoo works, because we're a charity, that those three letters that I said, ZSL, remember they stand for the Zoological Society of London, is a charity. So we get funded, so our scientists apply for lots of funding from the government to try and help them to complete these projects. So when they told the government, when they applied for this money, they told them how important it was to save the fish that are around the Pitcairn waters and the whales as well and the birds. the wildlife around there. The government agreed, because it's a British territory, so it belongs to the government here, they agreed and they helped us out by giving us some money to send our scientists there and to send me there, and we're probably going to go back at the end of this year and at the beginning of next year with the money that we were able to get from the government.
Thank you.
Good question.
Okay, Molly?
We understand you visited Palula School on the island and spoke to the children. Did you learn any valuable information about the habitats of animals which live on or around the island?
I did indeed, as well as learning how a school that is so different to the schools here in the UK and the other parts of the world. So they have 8 children in that school. They're all of different ages and they all share a classroom. So if you can imagine how weird that might be for them, but obviously it's normal, but it's weird for us. And then they also told me about the animals from the island. So they told me about Mrs. T, who you might have seen a photo of, the big giant Galapagos tortoise, who's been there for years and years. And obviously she's not from Pitcairn, she's from the Galapagos, as you might know from her name and studying the Galapagos story as well. But someone who was travelling past Pitcairn took Mrs. T when she was a teeny tiny little tortoise, and then she's grown into this giant reptile, which is amazing. So they told me about Mrs. T, what she likes to eat, and whereabouts on the island she lives, so that I could go and find her. Because although it's a small island, it was quite hard to find Mrs. T. And they also told me about some of the animals that only live on Pitcairn and nowhere else in the world. So Pitcairn has got almost 100 different animals. Sorry, is it?
You're still there, don't worry.
Okay. Pitcairn has about 100 different animals that are called endemic, and that means they only live on those Pitcairn Islands and nowhere else in the world. So they told me about some of the birds that only live there, some of the fish, and then lots of insects that scientists have only found on Pitcairn, and even some things like mollusks and crustaceans that live in the sea as well. So the children have some diagrams that they showed me that they painted and drawn from these animals that they know only live on that island as well. And they wanted me to show the children in the UK lots of animals from there so that the children here could see what lives there.
Thank you.
Okay, Trav?
What can you tell us about the marine life, Bounty Bay?
At Bounty Bay, so I was very lucky. I snorkeled at Bounty Bay and I saw the same turtle, I think, because it had a little hook on its shell, so I recognised that. And it was a green turtle that was swimming around and coming quite close to the people that was snorkeling as well. There weren't many of us, but the turtle did come quite close. And then I saw some of the fish. There was quite a few fish, a little bit of coral as well, and lots of crustaceans, things like shrimps and crabs and things like that in the sea as well. And lots of marine birds were coming by as well. Very good question.
Thank you.
Okay, and finally, Gary. Last question.
What's the most powerful memory from the experience?
The most powerful memory. I think it was actually the birthday, Emily's birthday, right at the end of my stay, because there aren't that many children on Pitcairn Island. It was her birthday, and by tradition, when one of the children has a birthday, the whole island, so that's the whole community of Pitcairn, just gathered around, and normally it's in the square, Adamstown Square, but for Emily's birthday it was at her grandmother's house, which has a great view of Bounty Bay. So the whole of Pitcairn, which is only about 50 people, but still, the whole of the community came down. They all brought their own food. Some of the food is traditional Pitcairn food, and they all sang happy birthday, they all got her presents, and it was great to see the whole community in one place, which I hadn't done until that day, and it was my last day on the island, so I was very happy to have everyone together and be there for a birthday celebration, which sounds so simple to us, but actually it's a big deal to have a whole community together. Great question, thank you.
Thank you.
Right, okay, Anna, that's all the questions that we